This podcast is a 98 Studios production.
Today's the day, baby.
Today's the day.
Today's the day.
Today's the motherfucking day.
Today is the day.
Today's the day.
Today is the day.
Today's the day.
What up, everybody? Welcome back to Today's the Day with Zack Anderson. As always, I'm super excited to record tonight. A little bit of a different episode. First time meeting is tonight, so I'm really excited to dive in, get to know you a little bit with everybody else on here. But first and foremost, before we go anywhere with this, I want to thank Mr. Jordan Tarver for being here. Thank you so much, man. You traveled in all the way from where?
Seattle.
Got here today. So I appreciate you big time, man. Thank you for being here, and I'm excited to dive into it. We appreciate you.
Yeah, man, I'm stoked to be here. Thanks for having me, and let's get it rolling.
It's gonna be fun.
Yeah, let's do it.
So fill us in real quick. So Jordan, where are you from? Fill us in on kind of where you come from. We'll get to where you're at eventually, I'm sure. But give us the background on you real quick to help us get to know you a little bit.
Yeah, so I grew up in a small town of about 40,000 people in a beautiful place called Sonoma County, an hour north of San Francisco.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm youngest of four. I went to a small Montessori school with only 40 other kids. And so when I transferred from that large school or small school to a large school, I started to feel like I wasn't really fitting into my life.
Mm-hmm.
And so a big part of my childhood and growing up was actually working through a ton of insecurities that held me back from the person who I am now.
Mm-hmm.
And so a big part of my childhood was, or I guess after my childhood, was unpacking all of that and unpacking the things that were starting to feel like they were becoming my biggest problems.
Cool.
And so, when I think of my childhood and being from Northern California and Sonoma County, it's highly defined by that. And that's why I do like a lot of things I do now.
What do you mean by that?
By those insecurities. So
got you.
I feel like my life was defined by my insecurities and self-doubt.
Understood.
And it took a great deal of work to kind of unpack and unravel and overcome those things.
Cool. I'm super stoked to dive into you unpacking and unraveling those things. I think that's super powerful. But even staying back kind of where it originated, right?
Yeah.
You're youngest of four. When you say insecurities, and I understand not fitting in and stuff, you go from a small school to a large school, that's probably a massive, like, what the hell type thing. Where do you think your insecurities kind of started? Or was there any particular moment where you remember like, holy crap, that was like a moment that like stuck with me for a long time? And if not, no worries, but I'm just curious.
Yeah. I mean, the biggest thing was that transfer it was going from until I was about 11 being in a school of 40 people and then going to a school of 700.
Yeah.
And that's a culture shock.
Why did you transfer?
The school ended at 6th grade.
Got you. So then you went into a middle school or junior high.
And so the tough thing too was like the people who were at that school started a year before me together.
Mm-hmm.
And so I had started a year after. So not only was I dealing with the culture shock of, hey, like there's almost 550 more people at the school.
Yeah.
But these kids also know each other. They've also been going to school together since they were like 4. I was in a different town and a district. So a lot of that insecurity came from literally just feeling like I was the new kid on the block and then not being able to find that like groove.
Got you. And what is that like? Like I can totally relate to that, but what was that like for you in the moment? Because I know how you interpret it now, but in that moment, what was it like out of curiosity?
Just not knowing my place.
Mm-hmm.
And honestly, like there was a lot of like, I feel like every day was like, okay, maybe like today's the day. Maybe today's the day that I fit in, like not to be like,
I like
the name of the podcast, but legit, like maybe this is the day where I could find my groove or meet the people or find my confidence.
Yeah.
But that just felt like a never ending like labyrinth. Then I never could really find like that path for a while.
Mm-hmm.
And so the big part for me was like, it was a daily battle. It wasn't just like, oh, like, yeah, day one of school is tough.
Yeah.
No, it was like day 1 through 900. You know, it was all tough.
Got you. And did that continue all the way up through high school and everything like that, you're saying?
Yeah. So I felt like, so I left Northern California for college. I went to school at Cal State Fullerton in Southern California in Orange County. And I was the only person in my friend group that really left. And so I felt like, I was like, hey, this is an opportunity to maybe like, hit the reset button, start fresh, try to redefine who I was. But I realized you take the person you are wherever you go.
Yep.
And so that insecure, self-conscious, unconfident person stuck with me.
Yeah.
Until I really committed to making a change.
So you, in your mind, in your young mind, it was like, okay, when I get somewhere new, these feelings will stay back where they were because it was the circumstance and the situation that was causing the problems, not me.
That's what I thought.
And then,
yeah.
that's what you thought, right? And then when you got to college in SoCal, you're like, shit, like it's still here.
Oh wait, I go everywhere. It's just me. It's just me. It's not. It's the way my brain is processing the situation, because a lot of those insecurities were only true because I made them true in my head.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I think a lot of those things that we deal with in life, even, you know, that stuff still gets triggered. It's still part of me.
Yep.
But a lot of it is my perception of the experience and how I'm making myself feel about the experience.
Yep.
And that's what I had to like basically unlearn, was like, I could go into a situation and not put myself in that position from the very beginning.
Exactly. So, I mean, that's the Tony Robbins quote, right? Tony Robbins' famous quote is, the world is as you see it to you, not how it actually is.
Mm-hmm.
Basically, how you view the world is how your reality is, not how the world actually is.
Right.
So if that makes any sense, I butchered the quote, I think, but you know what I'm saying. That's awesome. So then you get there, you realize it's you. That's probably an aha moment or a breakthrough moment, I assume, right? Was that defeating or empowering at first?
I think it was empowering because it showed me that at any point in time, I could change my reality, truly. But like one decision, one shift, one change could be the thing that saved me.
How do you think you were able to interpret that in a positive manner rather than a negative manner? Like, oh, the problem is me, rather than how you interpret it, which was positive. Like, oh, I can literally one decision away from changing my whole life. How did you have that perspective? Because I think a lot of people get to the point where they realize, like, holy crap, no matter what circumstances I'm in, I'm insecure, I'm depressed, whatever it is, right? And that's more defeating than empowering. But I think a really powerful perspective to have is like, dude, if you take extreme ownership for everything, that then gives you the keys to your own life and gives you, because I totally agree with you 1,000%. Once you realize you're one decision away from changing everything because it's all you, it's super empowering. But I know a lot of people who view it differently. And I think there were even times in my life where I viewed it like, oh, like I'm broken or there's something wrong with me.
Right.
Why do you, or how do you think you had the perspective, or where did that come from, or who gave that to you? I'm curious there.
I mean, I have a very logical way. I mean, I look at the world logically, but I also look at the world spiritually, and I'm able to bounce between both of those perspectives. And my logical view of the world is there's two sides to the coin to every situation. There's a positive side and a negative side. And I get to make the choice of which side of the coin is mine. And having that understanding was like, okay, well, I don't want the negative shit. Like, I'll just choose the positive. If it's one or another, I'm going to choose the one that is going to make me feel better. And I know that sounds oversimplified, but that's how I see the world. Is I got two decisions.
Yeah.
You know, which decision can I make that will actually serve my greatest and highest good?
Really, I like that a lot. I've never really heard it explained that way. You basically, in every circumstance, in every situation, you have two different ways to view it, or two sides of a coin. One is shit's happening to me, and the other is this is happening for me. And like you being able to discern that and choose that first year of college.
Yeah, I mean,
that's impressive.
It was like, it wasn't like a snap of a finger and all was good, but I just felt like I was like, hey, if I didn't like feeling this way, well, then why don't I just start not feeling that way and starting to approach situations a little bit differently, and not going into the situation like, oh, like I don't fit in, I'm insecure, no one likes me, no one wants me here. Well, obviously I'm going to feel like shit if that's my thought process, you know? So it's how can I make that shift? And I think, you know, that seed was planted in that first year of college.
Yeah.
And it took like 4 or 5 years to really integrate into my life and kind of get over those things, like to a place where I felt like they weren't controlling me anymore.
Yeah. And what was that process like? When you say integrate, there's obviously things that you're doing to integrate it. What were those things that you were consciously or unconsciously doing to go and get to that point where they didn't control you anymore?
I think for me, it was like putting myself like in the situation instead of on the outskirts. I feel like in those years of middle school and high school, I found myself just floating right to the outside of the group or to the outside of the experience. And if I set myself on the outside, well, then of course I'm going to feel like an outsider.
Yep.
But if I go to a social situation and I just say, I'm going to like insert myself into the experience and be a part of it, and like add value, add my authenticity and my personality to a situation, well, I'm going to feel a lot more part of what's happening.
100%.
And so, you know, I was in a place where I was like, oh, like, you know, I got this 4-year college, you know, career or whatever you want to call it ahead of me. And well, how can I just start to act a little bit different and change my behavior? Because really, I think change comes down to behavior. That's what changes. How can you change your behavior in a way that supports you? And so I just started looking for ways to make those micro shifts, because I think a lot of times with change, people think it's all or nothing, that we have to do something crazy or we have to make some massive shift. But really, change, it's simple. You do one thing that compounds over time and it turns into something greater. And so it's how can I approach a situation and make a micro shift, approach another situation and make a micro behavioral shift. And over time, those would stack up to a new me.
Exactly. So basically, you just went and just altered your trajectory just a little bit.
Yeah.
Whereas most people try and take a hard left turn to get over there to the left. But you realize if you go and just change your trajectory a little bit to the left and you give it enough time, you're going to end up just as far to the left.
Yeah.
Right. And that's a super, super powerful lesson in and of itself. Right. Where did you go and pull because insecurity is basically allowing your fear of failure in some form or fashion to control your actions. Or maybe it was just because it was so subtle, but I'm curious, where did you go and pull the courage to be able to go and be okay, I'm going to actually go insert myself in these social settings? Because I relate to that a lot. There was a certain time in life where I was super insecure. Then I was I'm done with this. I'm going to go make good friends.
Yeah.
Right. And it was really uncomfortable, but it was I was just so sick of having no friends, basically. Where did you go pull the fear from? Or was it just once you had the realization, you're yeah, I need to start doing that?
Well, I mean, you kind of touched on it right here. I think your experience is heavily influenced by the people that you're surrounded with. And so I think in college, it felt like I had an opportunity to choose my new friends and choose my community and choose my network and find people that I felt more aligned with. Whereas in, middle school, you go to middle school and you're kind of inserted into this bubble. Yeah. You're in that bubble and you all go to high school together. You're in that same bubble. Nothing changes.
Yep.
But when you go to college and you leave everyone you ever knew for the last 16 years, 18 years of your life,
you
start fresh and you go, okay, well, I can find a new community. I can choose a new community. So for me, it was finding the people who felt like they already accepted me for who I was, and I didn't have to make a case for who I was.
Gotcha. You didn't have to go put a mask on and be someone different or anything like that. What advice do you have for finding those people? Because those are obviously the best friends. The best friends are the ones who accept you how you are. You don't have to be any different to be accepted. How do you go find those? Because I'm sure there are people listening, and I love to challenge things for the people listening, where it's well, yeah, but none of those are around me. I can't leave to college. I'm stuck here working. I got to do this. I got to provide here.
Yeah.
How do I go find these new circles that are all of a sudden supportive and will accept me how I am? Right.
I think the big thing is you want to meet people in a space where you're doing a thing you're actually interested in. So for example, if you're someone who doesn't drink, you probably don't want to go to a bar to meet a friend. If you're someone who's doing yoga, you probably want to go to yoga classes and integrate yourself within that community. So I think the key to finding aligned friendships is doing the things you like to do, so you'd be surrounded with people who also like to do those things.
That's really good advice. I like that a lot. Okay, so then you're going through your experience of your 4 years of college, and what were some breakthroughs? What were some realizations? And where did you go from there?
So, I mean, like I said, I realized that all the things I ever carried in my life, my insecurities and self-doubt, they came with me. And for most of my life, I was living on autopilot. I knew these things were defining my life. I knew they were controlling me, but I wasn't doing anything to change them until I really got older. And honestly, my life began the same moment I thought it was going to end. It was 11 p.m. on a Friday night. I'm with a group of 9 friends. We're at this event. We're leaving the event. We're in the parking lot, and we kind of have destination fixation. So we both get into separate cars, and we peel out of this parking lot. And I swear, we were on the freeway within 3 seconds. We were going fast.
Yeah.
And so we're driving down the freeway, 85 miles per hour. And I had this urge to ask my friend to slow down. And the words are about to come out of my mouth, but then something kind of holds me back. And I sit back in my seat. And at that very moment, our friends in the other car clip our car. We fishtail out of control. We slam into the asphalt and we slide across a 5-lane freeway. And at this point, everything's in slow-mo. There's all I can see are sparks. I can smell the burning metal of the car. And it really feels like my life's about to end. And our car, it stops just before we're hitting the center divider. And we all climb out of the car in shock. And we're on the side of the road and just heavily confused at what just happened.
Yeah.
And there's more paramedics than I can count on one hand around us. And a paramedic walks over to check our heart rates. And as he gets closer, he looks at us and he says, "Most people aren't alive when I come out to these." And in that moment, And after I was like, that really took me back. And,
Yeah.
I was really young when this happened. I was at a place in my life where I thought I was invincible. I thought the future was going to be promised to me and I figured it was going to be great. But in the days, weeks, and months after that accident, fear was at the center of my life. Like I couldn't even drive on the freeway. It was, the scenes of the accident, the scent of the burning metal, the panic, the trauma, the shock, not knowing if I was going to actually live another day, all that would replay. And it took a while for those fears to go away. And once they did, that's when I realized that wasn't a car accident. It was a wake-up call. And I realized that I had to stop living on autopilot. I couldn't just continue to manage these problems, let them define my life.
Yeah.
But I had to make those choices, make those changes that would help me overcome my biggest problems and free me from the things that were holding me back. And that's when I really locked into taking that ownership and that responsibility so that I didn't die and be incredibly regretful of living the life that I lived.
Yeah.
But I could be more proud of what I was doing because I was like, hey, you know what? I left it all on the table.
Yep.
And it was that moment in college that was the switch. That was the switch.
That's very, very cool. I mean, I'm sorry you had to go through that as like your wake-up call, right?
I know, like, yes, it sounds intense and yes, it was, but
biggest blessing.
Deeply grateful for what happened. And I think two things. I still think about it to this day. Why did I not speak up? Why did I not ask him to slow down?
Yeah.
Second thing is, how could 10 friends, one car on the side slides across 5 lanes, our other friend does 2 full rotations, land tire side up. How could we all walk away unscathed?
That's crazy.
There is a protection happening there. And I think, when I reflect on it from a more spiritual sense, is like, I don't think I was supposed to ask him to slow down. I think there was a lesson that I was bound to learn, and that's how I was going to learn it.
Yep.
And the universe knew that I wasn't going to die. So it's like, hey, we're going to put you through this, and then you're going to reflect on it, and it's going to change your entire life.
Yeah, which is really cool. For anyone listening, to avoid the car accident part, a really, really cool way to go and kind of approach life in the same way. And we've had a lot of guests who talk about it. Those are specifically actually the guests that we try and have on here who live like today's the day. That's the point of it, right? A really good way to go and put that in perspective is to go and kind of do everything with the end in mind, right? Like if you've ever heard of like, what do you want your legacy to be? What do you want to be written on your tombstone? If you approach your everyday actions with that in mind, I assume that's probably where you started living from, a place of like, there's no guarantee for tomorrow at all. I don't have that right? Like every day is a blessing. So I'm going to go and do what I want to do with it and make the most out of it, which I'm super excited to hear about because I literally don't know you. And this is fun, as fun for me as everybody else listening, right? Which is unique for me. Okay, cool. So that's like your breakthrough, right? Like that is your wake up call, like you call it. And I think that's amazing and a massive blessing in disguise at the time. And now you recognize that, which is really, really cool. So then moving on from there, you lived in fear for a little bit. And then when you finally got over that and stopped living in autopilot, then what?
Well, then it was like, now that I was past that fear, I was living through that lens of, hey, if tomorrow's my last day, or it could be my last day, what can I do today to put me in a place that feels like I'm living to my fullest potential? And, like obviously that was 2013 that it happened, March 22nd, 2013. And I had that was freshman year. So I had 3 years of school left. And so, life kind of just like, it didn't change much because of the experience I was in. I was in 4-year college. I was getting a business degree. There wasn't much I could do outside of that container. But after studying 4 years, I was like, at first I chose to get a finance degree because wanted to make fucking money. Like really, I wanted a sexy paycheck. I wanted a cool office and all those cool things that I thought were cool at the time. And I graduated, or upon getting closer to graduation, I was like, I don't think I want to be in finance. I just spent 4 years studying it, but I'm starting to think this isn't for me. And fortunately, I'm the youngest of 4, and all 3 of my siblings had done some sort of traveling after school. And it was something my parents had always encouraged us as an option. We had to pay for it ourselves, but it was an option. They weren't going to force us into a corporate job. And that's like the best part for me. I don't speak for myself. I don't want to speak for my siblings. But one thing that I've really appreciated about my childhood is that my parents never gave us a predetermined path. They allowed us to choose the things that felt authentic to us on our heart.
Yeah.
And so after I graduated, it was like, well, I don't want to go work. I don't want to do this. And I saved up some money. And so I bought a ticket to Europe for a solo backpacking trip. And at first I was supposed to go with a friend, and my friend bailed because he got a job and they had to do training in the summer. And so I was like, oh shit, like I'm going to do this alone. You know, I got to do this by myself. And I remember telling my mom, and she was like shocked because it was so out of character for me because of who I used to be.
Yeah.
But it felt like that next calling from the universe to really start to understand who the heck Jordan Tarver was.
Mm-hmm.
And so I flew to Europe and did this 5-week backpacking trip. And I was telling my wife the story the other day. We were talking about something. We were on a hike and we were talking about something that brought the story up that I, right when I landed in London, I get on the train and I go into my hostel and I look up, I'm like, damn, I'm going in the wrong direction. And I was like, this is a fucking great start. Like, this is a really great start.
Yeah.
And so I hop off the train. Luckily, like, you know, it's an English speaking country, so it's really easy to navigate. Get back on the train, go to the hostel, get to the hostel, and you go in your hostel rooms. There's lockers under the bed. So you lock your bag up for the day and you kind of go out and do your thing. Because a lot of hostel rooms, people that haven't been in hostels, you know, 6, 7, 8, 10. I was in a room once with 40 people. Like, there's a lot of people. It's not just like a hotel.
Yep.
So I lock my bag in there and I'm like, fuck, I got to meet someone. Like, I have to go meet someone. And it felt so out of my comfort zone. And I realized, I was like, okay, well, like, I'm going to be here for 5 weeks. Like, I got to do it now because for the next 5 weeks, I'm going to have to put myself out there and meet people.
Yep.
And so I'm like pacing around the hotel or the hostel room, like anxious, stressed out, like just very uncomfortable.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, it can't be that hard. And so this guy comes in. I was like, yo, dude, you want to go grab a beer? He's like, yeah, sure. And I was like, oh my God, it's that easy? Like, it's that easy to meet people. And I think at that moment, I realized that, like, we overcomplicate things so much.
Yeah.
And I was making up this whole story in my head of how hard it was going to be to meet people, how hard it was to put myself in these situations or make this experience what I wanted it to be. But really, it was just one question. And so I did that for the rest of the 5 weeks. I literally became a new person.
Yeah.
Like, my friends, my wife, who wasn't my wife at the time, we had been friends for 4 years before we were together. And she said she didn't recognize me when I came home. I was complete. There's a Jordan Tarver who was before the trip, and there's a Jordan Tarver after the trip. And they're two very different people, like very different people. And I found this new groove by putting myself in those uncomfortable situations and almost forcing myself to do things that I normally wouldn't do at home because I wasn't in that bubble of familiarity anymore. I wasn't in that comfort zone. And I really fell in love with this trip. And I was in Barcelona, and
I love Barcelona.
Oh, dude, we'll go there.
I love Barcelona.
So I'm in Barcelona and I'm staying at this hostel, and it was like one of the best hostel experiences I've ever had. It was very family oriented. They had family dinners every night. They did bar crawls together, and it just had this different feel. And I fell in love with the place. I fell in love with the people. And later that trip, I flew to Portugal. My sister was living in Paris at the time, and I took a 4-hour bus to the very tip of Portugal to a place called Sagres. We stayed at a surf hostel to do a week of surfing. And my flight to go home was the next day. And I was like, you know what? I don't want to go home. I'm 5 weeks into this trip. I'm single at the time. I have no job. I moved out of my house before I left. I literally don't have a place to live. Like, why am I going home? Like, there's nothing pulling me back. There's no responsibility. There's no girl. There's no house. And I was like, well, what if I didn't leave? And so I get on Facebook Messenger, popular at the time, and message the hostel manager in Barcelona. And I was like, hey, like, I don't really want to go home. You know, like, I really fell in love with the place, the people. Like, do you guys have any volunteer opportunities there? She's like, yeah, can you be here tomorrow? And I was like, no fucking way. And so I talked to my sister, and she's like, yeah, you should go for it. And so I call my parents. I'm like, yeah, if that's what you want to do, you got to do it because you're never going to do this again in your life. Again, permission from my parents to do the things that I was called to do. And so I was like, all right, I quit, or I forfeited my flight home the next day, bought a one-way to Barcelona, and lived and worked at the hostel for another month and a half. So that trip went from 5 weeks to 3 months and has been, alongside with the car accident, the most defining experience I've ever had in my life.
That's so sick. I love that. So as you're out there, when you say you left one person and came back another, I can guess why, but I want to hear some of the reasons why, right? Like the one right out the gates, your first example, you're pacing around your hostel. You're like, I got to go make a friend. And I can imagine that feeling. Like I being alone is like my biggest fear. Like literally my biggest fear. Being alone with my thoughts is not my vibe, right? But also going and being in a situation where I'm not around people I know and having to go meet people is also one of my biggest fears. So that to me is like anxiety central. And as you were saying that, I was thinking, we just had Jeff Mendez on and he had a really cool quote I'd never heard. And I'm curious if you've heard it. He said, worrying is like paying a debt you don't owe. And I worry a ton when I'm in those types of situations. So that's what I'm thinking. I'm like, oh, there's a one-liner that's like my brain remembers clips. That's about it.
Yeah.
And that makes perfect sense there. But along the way, what were some other things, right, that were really like groundbreaking to you that were like, oh, aha, that made you leave one way and come back a totally other way? And probably a way that you liked yourself a lot more, I assume, or you were way more authentic to yourself.
Well, like as cliche as it sounds, like I fucking found myself.
Yeah.
Like, people are like, oh yeah, go to Europe, backpack, you found it. But like, it's true. Like I created the space to understand the deepest parts of my soul and essence. And it's because I left the things that were so familiar, so comfortable, so safe. And it required me to adapt to a new situation. And through that, I learned more about myself.
Yeah.
And so I came back with more authenticity,
That's
with more
awesome.
confidence rooted in the authenticity. And also, I think it just opened me up.
Mhm.
Like I came back in that free-spirited energy. Like I was just like, I could do whatever. Like I feel so comfortable doing whatever. I just lived for 3 months out of a backpack, like meeting random people, not knowing a single person. Like it gave me so much confidence of what I could now do in my normal reality.
Yeah.
And so I think that's what it just cracked me open, dude. It cracked me open and it revealed like who I truly was. And through that, that's when I really started to find the things that were authentic to me, like the things that I was truly passionate about.
So
my
cool.
my deepest, like my purpose and like what I was here to do, and not just like doing what everyone else wants to do. Because when you're in that college bubble, for anyone that does the 4-year track, like you kind of just get in the rhythm of everybody. You're all doing the same shit. It's a routine. It's the autopilot. And so I think it just allowed me to break free of that and really ask myself deep questions. Because like, I mean, as you probably know now, I'm a very introspective person, and I go into every situation of like, I could learn something from this. I know I can, and if I reflect on it, I could even learn more.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think a lot of the breakthroughs came after. It was go do the experience, go live it, go enjoy it, go get drunk on a bar crawl, go meet people, go have the craziest time for 3 months, and then come back and do the homework.
Yep.
What did that mean? What did it add? What did you learn? And so I think the real breakthroughs came after, when I started to have space from that experience and get out of that bubble and be able to look back on it with more pure eyes of wondering like, okay, what was this? What did it do for me?
Yeah.
And how is it serving me?
I love that. And what did you find? So you get back and you start looking back on it and trying to give it all meaning, which I think is really, really cool as well, because I think a lot of people have life-changing experiences, but they don't reflect on them enough to go and give them meaning that they can carry through the rest of their life.
Yeah.
Right. And you don't have to go travel Spain and Europe and everything you don't have to go to Europe for 4 weeks or 5 weeks or 3 months to go and have like it can be any experience in life.
Yeah.
If you look back and give enough meaning, because everything's happening for a reason.
For
right?
sure.
So as you do that, what are you learning? What are you finding? What are you seeing?
Yeah. So to take it back a little bit, when I got home, I'm still jobless, but I mean, if I'll unpack this a little bit before we go there, I was living on a tight budget when I was on a trip. Like I said, it was self-funded. And so I was doing everything I could to make my dollar go far.
Yep.
But I was running out of money.
Mm-hmm.
And I got to the point where I was using a credit card, and it was like accepting my credit card over the balance. And I was like, okay, well, I'm just going to, I guess, kind of use my credit card for now until I get home. But I was like, shit, like I need money. Like I do need money. And I wasn't making money. When I worked at the hostel, it was a trade. So I got room and board and food. And if we led the bar call, we would get like free drinks and shit like that. But there was no money involved. So I wasn't refilling my bank account. I was just emptying it the whole time. And so when I was on my trip, I was like, okay, well, I need to expedite this hiring process of getting the job. And I had a couple friends who were working at a mortgage company and aligned with my finance degree and had good friendships with them. And so I sent them my resume like 2 weeks before coming home to see if they can get me in and like get the interview process going.
Yep.
So when I got home, I was still jobless. Like that process didn't come to fruition yet. I didn't have the job.
Yep.
So I was jobless. I also had no house. And so I was like, okay, well, where the fuck am I going to live? And how the fuck am I going to make money? Luckily, I have a really good core group of friends who are still my best friends today. They were at my wedding 4 months ago. Like, these are like my guys, And they were like, dude, why don't you just come sleep on our couch until you figure your shit out? And I was like, thank you. Like, I'll clean the house. I'll do anything. I can't pay you guys, but I'll do anything to at least try to compensate in some way.
Yeah.
And so I was sleeping on the couch for 2 months. without a job. And I was wondering, like being this intentional person I am, at the time I was surfing a lot. And so I was surfing all day or all morning. And then I would have like, from 1 to nighttime of free time.
Mm-hmm.
Just like, okay, all my friends are at work. What do I do? And I was like, I can't just sit around. I'm not a video game player. I don't love TV. I can't just sit here and do nothing.
Yep.
And I was like, well, before leaving for the trip, I wanted to make it a really intentional trip. And so I brought this journal, leather-bound journal. I got this patch made on it and just made sure it like held a lot of meaning within the actual journal itself, and made it meaningful to me, like named it and all this kind of stuff. I was like, well, I have this journal. I have this journaled every day. I got all this documentation of the trip. What if I turn that into a book? Because I was starting to fall in love with writing on my trip. And before the trip, I fucking hated writing, dude. I wasn't good at it. I had no interest in doing it.
Yeah.
But as I started to write more about myself and what I was learning, it was becoming something I really enjoyed.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was like, well, what if I turn this into a book of some sort? And so I was like, okay, well, I'm going to start copying all the journal entries into like a Google Doc. And so I started copying the journal entries into the Google Doc. And then I was like, okay, well, how can I make this? Because for me, in all the work I do, my purpose right now is to express myself with an emphasis on helping other people. That's what I'm here to do. Express myself while helping other people through that self-expression. So I didn't want to just write a book about my life or that trip. I wanted to write a book that people would actually take something away. So I asked myself, well, how can I add something into this book to make it a learning for other people?
Yep.
And so I started doing present day reflections on those journal entries. So I was reliving those moments and asking myself, what was I being taught? What was I learning in this moment that I could, one, take into my life, but also spread into others? And so through that process of writing the book, that's where that deep self-reflection really started. And I started to really unpack like all the things that I was learning.
I love that.
Yeah.
So you were not only reliving it, you were extracting the lessons with a purpose behind it, which probably meant you were getting a lot more out of it than most people that go back for selfish reasons. I'm not saying selfish reasons are wrong. You want to go get all the lessons out of every experience, but you had like a purpose behind it, which is very, very cool and very unique. So then you went like, maybe not, but you went like green lights mode. You pulled a journal out. Have you read that book?
Yeah.
I love that book. I've read it multiple times. And
Great on audio.
It's
as well.
so good on. So is Will. Will and
Okay.
Green Lights are both so good on audio because Will Smith and Matthew McConaughey read them.
Yeah, and he's probably super dramatic and like acting.
He raps in it. It's amazing, dude. Both those are amazing. But you went Green Lights full on. You pulled the journal out. You went and did you go and create a book out of that then?
Yeah, so I created a book. It was so to give a little backstory on that journal.
Yeah. What'd you name it?
This is that story. So,
Okay, good. Yeah, I gotta know. I was gonna ask him like, I gotta ask. I want to know what you named it.
So as we're probably understanding so far, I'm a very purpose-driven, intentional person. I love to like assign so much meaning to things in my life. It makes me more motivated, inspired to do them. And so I was like, well, I don't want to just bring a journal. I don't want to just bring a moleskin. Like this is my first time journaling. I want to make it like important. I want to make it mean something to me. I want to make it sick because like. I started my journey as a travel photographer. So at my core, like I'm an artist, like artist through and through, and I will carry that forever with me. That's where I draw a lot of my work from is the artistry within me. So to me, it was an art project, and so I was thinking about it, and I was like, what would this be called? And so I came up with this name called "To Whom It May Concern," and the idea of that was that, and I guess this is without even me knowing at the time, I was foreshadowing to what was going to happen was. If my journal fell out of my backpack when I was traveling and someone picked it up, it would feel like it was written to them and for them. And so from the very beginning, the intention of the journal was more than me. It was writing to someone else. It was writing it for my kids one day to understand what I did at that age. It was documenting it for other people to learn for their own purposes. And little did I know, I didn't know at the time I was going to turn into a book, but it made so much sense. So the book was called Moment to Whom It May Concern, Volume 1. There isn't a Volume 2. Don't know if it will expand. And I just really that was like more of a passion project. So like, you can't actually find it online anymore. It's since been taken down. And I just released it within my inner circle, really close community. And because I was a travel photographer at the time, when I did the book launch, I actually held this event at a coffee shop and did an entire art gallery of all my photos printed on 20 by 30 wood prints and essentially made a visual walkthrough of the trip
That's
itself.
cool.
And that was like the launch event. But I didn't like pour effort and money behind it.
Yeah.
That for me, that wasn't the purpose. For
Yep.
me, I think the purpose was exploring that passion for the first time with like open curiosity of what would happen if I started to explore writing.
Yep.
And little did I know that would unfold into everything I'm doing now. But it started with that 1 ounce of curiosity with no end goal besides what's over here.
That's awesome. That's way cool. So then you went and you get home, you write the book, you're sleeping on your friend's couch, and then where do you go from there? To get from there to where you're at is I'm curious on that, and I think that'll be super fun to go and hear about as well. How long ago was this, by the way, when you're sleeping on the couch? How many years ago?
That was in end of 2016. So was that 7 years ago or 8 years ago now?
I was about to graduate high school the year following.
Okay.
Yep.
Yeah. So it was.
I'm a baby.
Okay, gotcha.
I'm a baby.
How old are you?
I'm 24.
24. I'm 29. So
There we go.
we're young. We're young.
We're both
We
young.
got a lot of life.
We got plenty, hopefully, right? So you're sleeping on their couch. Did you finally get a job, or was this like how many months was this where you're just like working on your passion project? That sounds amazing in and of itself.
Yeah.
Surfing all morning, working on your project. Like
Good life.
That's amazing, right?
Good life, but stressed out because I had bank money.
Exactly.
So it's like
The endless credit card wasn't it?
yeah. I was just like, it's just hanging over my head, and I was
I
like
love
wanted
that.
to get down. So it took 2 months. So I got home in end of August. I was working in October for a mortgage company.
Yeah.
At the time, I just needed money, and I didn't finish the project. By the time I got the job, I had got to a point where I wasn't copying stuff anymore, so I was just writing. And so it took some time to actually complete it. I can't remember off the top of my head. Actually, I do. I've released the book June 9th, 2017.
So not even a year after you got home.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
And I remember that because it was the day after my mom's birthday, and I coincidentally released my
I might need to text you and get a copy. It's not online anymore, but I might need to text you. And
I
get
got
a
some
copy.
at my house,
I
dude.
might need a copy of that.
No,
Just so
you can't
know.
judge me though, because I don't know what that writing looks like.
The last thing I would do is go and judge you. I might need a copy though, for real.
Yeah, we'll get you both books. But
That's awesome.
Yeah, you'd be one of the 100 people that have it in the world.
I like that. I
The
like that.
resale value might be big
That's
in a
what I'm
couple years. Who
saying.
knows?
I'm capitalistic. I might need 2 copies, one to keep, one to sell. So
Yeah.
you never know. That's awesome. So you get that wrapped up. You have a job. Was that a job where you saw a career in? Was it just to go and get that credit card paid off? What was your vision then? Where were you going then?
Yeah, at first it was for money because it was the easiest place for me to make a paycheck that would support what I needed at that time.
Got
It
it.
was to lean into my degree.
Got it.
Really.
Yep.
Because at the time, like what we're experiencing now with technology and online businesses, that wasn't quite a thing yet. Like it was a thing, but it
Yeah.
wasn't the thing it is now.
Yeah.
It wasn't as accessible.
Yep.
At the time I was trying to make it as a travel photographer. I
Mhm.
wanted to, it was in the days of Instagram travel inspo was like the fucking shit. And you plan out your feed and you make it look all sick and it looks
Yep.
like a gallery. Like that was the vibe. And so that's what
Those
I
were
was.
the good old days.
Yeah, dude, it's way different now.
Those
It
were
was way
great.
more artistic.
Those were great. It literally was an art journal.
for sure. Yeah,
Those
it's
were the
definitely
good old days.
changed a lot. But I found like that obviously wasn't going to happen fast enough for me to get work. And so I was
Yeah.
like, okay, well, the next easiest thing is to work in the place that I studied.
Yep.
So I worked at a mortgage company. I was with that first company. I was in the industry for 2.5 years.
Cool.
I was with that first company for just over a year. And I just never felt aligned. Like immediately, I just knew like this isn't for me. Like
Yeah.
working in the finance is not my shit. Like not
Do you think
me.
that part of that was because of all of the enlightenment? That's another like cliche, cheesy
Yeah.
word to go use, but like the enlightenment or the new perspective you had from your time in Europe where you're like, I can do anything I want to do, frankly.
And like I think I realized that the truth is like if I was gonna work, and I'm going to not for the rest, but close to it, but if I was gonna work for the rest of my life, hypothetically,
Mhm.
I have to do something that gives back to me.
Yep.
Or it could be an even energy exchange. You
Yep.
know, I could leave feeling maybe more full than when
Yeah.
I came in instead of feeling
It's a,
less full.
it's a deposit, not a withdrawal.
Right.
Yep.
And so, and I felt that I was just very in tune with my energy. At the time, I was very open and aware. Like
Mhm.
the one thing about the trip is it just heightened my awareness like immensely and exponentially and really rapidly.
And your self-awareness as well,
Yeah,
right? Is what
for
you're-
sure, yeah.
That's amazing.
And so I was aware of what was going on in here and like the feelings and the emotions and like the alignment or the misalignment.
Mm-hmm.
And so I really felt that immediately at the mortgage company. I was like, this isn't for me, like not at all.
Yep.
And so, I was like, well, I have a degree in finance. If I don't want to do finance, well, what else can I do? Well, I was like, well, I just fell in love with writing on my trip to Europe. Like, is there a way I can make a living through writing?
Mm-hmm.
That seems like the next best opportunity to explore. And at the time, this is probably about a year into the mortgage business. And I eventually found a new job, and it's a work from home job, which is great. You know, it's work from home in late 2017 was like very uncommon.
Yep.
Nothing like it is today.
Yep.
So I was like, oh, I'm special. Like I got the treatment, you know, I was like, how can I leverage this though? How can I leverage this time at home? And my brother at the time he was working at an editorial company. And so he was doing writing and he was using that craft to make a living, and he had all these freelancers. And I was like, hey dude, like what does it take for me to get a writing job? He's like, well, you need fucking reps. Like you need reps. Like that's the truth.
Yeah.
You don't have a journalism background. You have no samples. Like you have to prove that you're good. And I was like, well, can you help me? And he's like, yeah. So he gave me 2 of his clients.
Yeah.
And so I'm working an 8-hour mortgage job. And then I'm also working 2 hours on the back end after for this freelance writing gig. And I do that to build up those samples and really try to make myself, 1, learn how to write and get better, but then 2, show that I could do it when I go to apply for a company that is at an editorial online publication, let's say. And so I do that for like, maybe like, let's just say 6 months to a year.
Okay.
I can't remember the exact dates on that. And it wasn't going very well. That wasn't good.
Which part? Oh, the writing.
The writing. Like,
got it.
Wasn't very good. Definitely was coming up short on a lot of projects. Like I clearly didn't have a writing background, you know, like reality hit me in my face. I had a lot of work to do.
Yeah.
But because I was so connected to what it would provide me in doing something I loved, those reps and those failures and those mistakes were worth it, because that was the key to unlocking the door to the thing that I wanted.
Got it.
And so I was willing to do the work.
You had a why.
Yes.
Yep.
And like my thing is like, I will do what's required. Like I will do what's required to be the best at something that I want to be the best at. Like
Yep.
I will go the distance. I will do the uncommon. I will do the things that no one wants to do, because to me, remaining the same, especially in a life you don't like, that pain is far greater than the pain endured while transforming your life to get to a place that you want. So it's like,
100%.
I will feel that pain because I know the end result is better than staying stuck in this life.
Yep.
And so dude, just reps and reps and reps. And there was one time at the very end of it, I was like, okay, I think I'm ready to apply for a job. I think I'm ready. And my brother was then working at a new company. He was at an online publication in New York. And he's like, hey, dude, there's this role open on this team. You can apply, but I'm not going to help you get the job. Like you have to get it. I'm not going to co-sign. Like I don't want to be attached to it. I don't want no nepotism. You have to earn that job. And so I applied for that job, and I was on this road trip with my girlfriend at the time, now wife. And I get a message from one of the freelance clients. And he's like, hey, Jordan, I don't think this is going to work anymore. I think you got work to do. And so here I am applying for a full-time job, saying to myself, I can do this. And then on the other spectrum, someone's telling me I'm not good enough.
Yep.
And so now I'm fighting this like duality of, am I good enough? Who do I believe? Do I believe him? Do I believe myself?
Mm-hmm.
And I did everything I could to just drown that out and just trust the process.
Yep.
And so I applied to this job and I earned the position and I got the job. That's when I made that switch from out of the finance world for good and into this realm of editorial, but really just this world of writing as a profession.
Yeah. That's very, very, very cool. I mean, and you just mentioned something super cool. Basically, we get faced with opportunities to doubt ourselves all the time. And sometimes everything in life points to the doubt is right? Like the doubt is correct. The faith
math
is not.
adds up. Yeah.
Right. The math is pointing towards doubt, not faith. And you have to literally have faith regardless. That is very, very cool. And that was then 5 years ago.
Yeah. I got that job in 2018.
So 5 years ago or 6 years ago now, I guess.
Yeah.
Wow, that's
just
crazy.
about.
That's awesome. So then where does it go from there? So what was your job there at the editorial?
So I started as a junior staff writer.
Okay.
Within 6 months, I was promoted to staff writer. And then another 6 months, I was promoted to the editor of the section. And then I worked at that company for a year and a half, I would say.
Mm-hmm.
And then at a point I was headhunted by Forbes. And so I was headhunted by Forbes, still with them today. I still work with them. And I run a large team there that focuses on, and the nice thing too, like, yeah, I didn't work in the finance world, but I manage and edit and organize teams that focus on personal finance content.
Got it.
So it's still within my wheelhouse in a way.
Got it. You found a way to go kind of collab a little bit.
Yeah.
Like
so
that.
I was headhunted by Forbes in the end of 2020.
Mm-hmm.
And then kind of made that switch there. That is my corporate career, but I had this whole other world over here going on at the same time of like building the personal brand, building my online presence, writing my next book.
Yep.
You know, writing that. Because like the first book, it was like a passion project. Really proud of it. Really proud of myself for even doing that. Like having the motivation and the belief that I could do something like that, especially not having like a writing background and not feeling like I was ever a strong writer.
Yep.
And then I was like, well, I want to do it for real. I want to like write a real self-help book, make a statement, because personal development, like that's my thing. Like that's my truth. That's like who I am. And so I just wanted to, I don't want to say become someone, but make a statement so loud in that industry that it brought my work into the spotlight in some sense.
I love that.
So although I was working this corporate career, which I still do, and there's going to be a time where that transition happens and it's coming. For sure. But I'm pouring like so much energy and purpose into this, what is basically a business right now. This brand and this message and this really body of work in the world. Yeah. That's where my heart is. Like that's truly where my heart is. And yeah, for me, the next thing in that journey was writing my book, You Deserve This Shit. And then I posted a video on February 2nd, 2022. Yeah, 22, with my book in it, 3.5 million views. Now I was like, okay, if this video had 600,000 and it sold this many, and this has like 5 times the amount of views, like what's going to happen? Yeah. And so I go on my selling report, 1,800 copies in 72 hours. And I was
so
like,
sick,
dude, what? And I was like, no way. Yeah. End of February, 5,000 books. We're ranked number 135 on all of Amazon at the time.
That's so
and I was
sick.
like, one, there's something special here with this book and this message. People are gravitating toward it. Mm-hmm. But also there's something special with using social media as a way to impact and spread my message. Yep. And so that was the switch that has now compounded the book, selling over 30,000 copies.
So sick, dude. I love that. That gets me so fired up because it's like, there are so many points in your story that are the points where people give up, right? The biggest one is before they even start, right? They just overcomplicate it. They look at the 50,000 words, they're like, yep, not doing that, right? Or, oh, I'd love to do that, and then they just never do it. That's the first place most people give up. Then it's the fear of once they go and they write the book, they don't want to release it because then they're open to failure, right? They fail there, right? They give up there. Then it's they release it, they get through day 1, all their friends and family support, and day 2 hits, and they're like, okay, that was a fluke. I shouldn't have done that. Like, and then they go 6 months down the road, and it's 5 copies a week, and they just kind of give up, take it off, don't worry about it anymore, right? But like the persistence, I think, is the real lesson for people to learn. Like the faith, you're acting in faith all the way through, and then your persistence is so badass. Like it's so cool.
Thank you.
And there's no substitute for it at all. Right, which is really, really cool. I love that. I love your story.
I appreciate it, man.
That's very, very cool. And now what's the vision, right? Now what's the game plan, the vision? You're still at Forbes, right?
Yeah. So I'm still working with Forbes, still building this whole business and empire over here with the self-improvement stuff. But the next step is, so I'm doing keynote speaking is like where my business has taken me now. Yep. And that first opportunity came through the book. Yeah. So like, just like, going direct to camera really quick. If you're thinking of doing something, if you're thinking of starting something in your life or whatever it is, that curiosity can really unfold to anything. When I first decided to make a journal on my trip to Europe, I never thought that it would become anything past the journal, but that turned into one book, that turned into another book, and that turned into an email of someone wanting me to come speak at an event. And now this is the whole career. And so when I think about the book, it's like, just take the action because you never know what it's going to compound into. Yep. Had I not brought that journal to Europe, I couldn't even tell you if I'd be in the seat right now. Truly. Yeah. Like I'm being fucking honest. Like I don't know if I'd be here. And it's like, just take the action, because you never know what's going to come from it. You never know what one shift, one change, one decision will lead to. And that's where the magic happens. Like that's where possibilities are created, is when you make that shift and you go after it and you are persistent. And so now it's like, well, this opportunity came across my plate April of 2022. And so now I'm in this whole world of keynote speaking. It's like, well, I'm speaking at the event tomorrow with Doug. And so I'm officially launching the speaking business and practice in February. I'm already on stage and whatnot, but like publicly online with the whole new website, and we're doing giveaways and we're making it a thing. Cause I want it, like, I don't like to just release something and be like, shower me with all this like praise and buzz. Like I want there to be value for the community and the audience as well. Not like, hey, congratulations, you launched. But it's like, what can I give them? What can I create for them to make it valuable for them? And so we're going to be doing all these like really dope motivational poster like artwork giveaways. And I'll be holding like an exclusive community. I'm calling it like a talk shop. It's going to be like kind of like a keynote, but more workshopy vibes and like Q&A, and it'd be really, really valuable for them.
I love it.
So really trying to find opportunities to make it more about them and less about me launching the business. But that's to say, like, that's the next wave. Like all of 2024 is like, we're going head down speaking. And that's going to be the career.
And you just nailed it on the head, why it's going to work. Like every person that I've interviewed, and every person or every mentor I have in my life, that's where their head is at. Their head is at, how do I go provide more value than I'm receiving? And if you lead with that, you always end up winning. I don't know an example where you don't. So dude, that's super exciting. One of my favorite things in the world is part 2s, going and following up with people after things. And I love it. And we will absolutely do that.
Dude,
I love that. I was even going to ask one last final piece of advice, but you honestly just dropped the freaking bomb. And I think that is like the piece of advice. Like if you have something, take your action. You never know what it's going to lead to. Act in faith and see what happens. Right. So I freaking love that. I want to be super respectful of everybody's time. The studio, I appreciate you again. I know you traveled in today. You're an absolute badass. I'm super grateful for the connection. I look forward to staying connected throughout time and everything like that. And if we can ever do anything for you, we would absolutely love to. So once again, thank you so much. And everybody for listening. Thank you guys, and much love until next time.
Thanks, brother. Appreciate it.
Yes, sir. Thank you guys so much for tuning in today. As always, it was a blast for me. I hope you got something out of this. If you got something out of this video of value, share this with a friend, and please go show your love. We're on all streaming platforms, including YouTube, Spotify, and Apple. Any ratings, comments, likes, shares, they go a very long way, and they make it so I can keep doing these things for you, and I would appreciate it greatly. So please go share with a friend. Until next time.